I wouldn't quit growing. I wouldn't quit learning. I wouldn't quit learning that I could do it better. I will publicly tell people I was a horrible leader the first 10 years I was in business because I was operating from that insecure ADHD kid that had people that had college degrees working for him or with him. And I didn't want them to know I didn't really know what I was doing. I was totally shooting from the hip.
Let me welcome Stephen Scoggins today at PivotMe.
What is going on, man? I'm so happy to be here, dude. I'm just stoked about this.
This is going to be a great interview. I'm so excited. You've got a hell of a backstory. I can't wait to dive into this, and then has turned into this amazing success story. But let's do this. Let's start at the beginning. You have a heck of a backstory, and you had a rough start. Can you tell us a little bit about your beginnings, and then we'll talk about how the transition occurred?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, a lot of folks, I would dare say there are more Americans that kind of are growing up now, like I kind of grew up then, which kind of breaks my heart a little bit. But, I grew up largely in a broken home, mom and dad, mother struggled with some mental abuse things that happened before my father. My father struggled with alcoholism, but at the end of the day, they weren't part of my early part of my life. Not the way I can remember it. My mom, on the other hand, would tell you, I changed her diapers. I did this. I'm like, I understand, Mom, but I don't have memories past like 3 years old or before 3 years old. I'm sorry. But no, and in all seriousness, I was largely raised by my grandmother. And, it's funny when you don't have a lot, you don't know you don't have a lot, especially when you're a kid, you just don't realize it. That wasn't until my grandmother came home one afternoon and basically discovered that she was diagnosed with cancer that day. Mm-hmm. Now I'm 9 years old. Okay. I've got a G.I. Joe in one hand, a Transformer in the other. Like I'm, literally Snake Eyes was kicking Optimus Prime's butt. Right. Just like minutes before. And, I'll never forget this because she sat me down. She had she's welling up with tears in her eyes. And she said, I don't really have anybody else. I need you to help me. Now, if you think about the mental acuity of a 9-year-old, right, the brains aren't even fully developed yet. I'm sure mine wasn't. I'm sure it was more mush. But there was something about her eyes that just made me want to dig in. And she proceeded to take the black chair that was next to the table, slide it across the old 70s, linoleum floor over to the tan, appliances, the stove or whatever, and begin to teach me how to make anything that could boil water. So the reason is because now I was responsible for getting my little brother up, who was 3 years younger than me. So he's 6, I'm 9, and going to get her meds and bringing her stuff. By the way, childproof containers are not childproof. They're adult proof, just for the record.
Noted.
Yeah. So that was kind of like the early start. I think that's where my caretaker, my desire to solve everybody's problems kind of came into it. Mm-hmm. That unfortunately, she passed away when I was 11. I immediately went to go live with my father. My brother went to live with my mother in Florida. I didn't realize at the time that was going to damage my brother and mine's relationship. I didn't realize he looked up to me. I wasn't even 12, my brain, again, you don't know what you don't know. Right.
Sure.
But that's when I started the construction industry and I started carrying studs at 11 years old. Wow. 25 cents a stud or $1 an hour, whatever was better for the business, according to my father. So they started me at 25 cents a stud, quickly found out that I moved things quickly and then said, no, let's give them $1 an hour. And I did that for a while and I didn't think anything about it. But over the course of the next 3 to 4 years, I met my very first mentor. And, he told me some things, or told me one thing specifically that ultimately long-term changed my ultimate direction. I know one of the things that I love about your show is you have these pivot point moments you like to talk about. And I've definitely had many of those. But when I met this man, he saw something in me I didn't see in myself. I did one of those, have you ever done those Ancestry.com, deep dives where you go on Ancestry down the rabbit hole?
I haven't done it. My sister has. I was adjacent. I was Ancestry adjacent.
Okay. So I went totally down the rabbit hole. Right. Okay. So if you were adjacent, you were getting all the cool things she was finding. Right.
Yeah.
Well, I went down the rabbit hole and I discovered in over 400, almost 500 years, not a single person with the last name of Scoggins had ever been a person of influence, or a great steward of relationships. Right. So they were destitute and impoverished in a variety of different levels. In fact, the whole reason Scoggins ended up here in the United States is because apparently in Europe, my ancestors shot a deer on a lord's land, which was a no-no.
Sure.
So they were sent here as part of a penal colony to become sharecroppers. Wow. And that's And that's like 400. I mean, that's almost 500 years. It's nuts, right? Here's why I think that's important. Here's why I think it's important for everybody to understand the importance of their pivot point, their catalyst moment, right? Which I know you're so passionate about, which is one of the things I loved about the show. Is Steve Myrick, my first mentor, was my dad's employer, but he became like a grandfather / father figure to me. And I'll never forget this. It was a hot summer afternoon. He pulled me down off my dad's framing crew, put me in his Jeep Grand Cherokee where there's plenty of AC, which I totally loved. And he looked at me and he said, Steven, he goes, I got a question for you. I'm like, well, what's that? He goes, what's the difference between a rich man and a poor man? And I was like, duh, money. Of course, it's money. Like, it's got to be money, right? He says, absolutely not. It's the way they think. Now, on the surface level, that took a long time before it actually sank in. The next question, follow-up question after that is what really, really hit me in the heart. And he said, do you want to think like me or do you want to think like your father?
Wow.
And it caused me to pause. Most of us are going through, like, no matter what level you're trying to achieve, maybe you're like me, you're in your mid 40s, you've done some really cool things, but you want to do some bigger things. And you also want to, take care of your family and do all that kind of stuff and just have an amazing life, but you keep hitting the ceiling, right? Mm-hmm. I'm sure you found, like I found, that the greatest reason that most of us struggle is because we simply don't know what we don't know. Right? If there was a better way, our type A type personalities would do it a different way. Or at least we tell ourselves we do it a different way and then stumble our way into it, right?
Sure. Sure.
Well, in this particular moment, I was forced to stop in my tracks and totally take inventory, like, of the difference between the two.
Yeah. Had you ever compared them before?
I had not. I never thought about it.
Sure.
You're in an environment, right? You're in we were spending a lot of time in mobile home parks and our mobile home specifically beside a cow pasture, which is nothing like being woke up in the morning by a cow mooing. But, I would get up. It's 5 a.m. We put on our boots. We head to work. When I wasn't at work, I was in school. When I wasn't at school, I was at work. Like I was, I was in one of the two places, and my dad worked really hard. He was not great with money, never was a good steward of it. He was the kind of guy that would borrow and never repay. And I lost you there.
Oh, I'm here. Can you hear me okay? I
can hear you. I just can't see you anymore.
That's strange. Here, I'm going to turn my screen on and off again real quick. Is it better?
I only see me at the moment.
Is so, because I'm seeing both and hopefully we're recording both.
Well, I guess it's on, if it's on your end, we'll just keep rolling.
Yeah. That's a local recording. So hopefully we'll capture it. Oh, it's a shame though, because the visual feedback is so important. Hopefully I'll pop back in here shortly.
Yeah, no worries. When I'm going through this with Steve specifically, I'm going through this rationalization process of defining the two. Now here's a case in point. So I kind of rattled off some stuff about my dad.
Okay.
Here's Steve Myrick. Steve Myrick was the kind of man who ran a very, very tight ship as a business owner. He was a self-made entrepreneur, self-made multimillionaire. That was kind of common knowledge around the people that we associated with. On top of that, he was also the kind of man that would literally go to a barbecue restaurant. Of course, we got barbecue restaurants here in North Kakalaki. That's what we got over here, And he would go there. He put $1,000 tip under a bag of hush puppies or baskets of hush puppies, walk out the door, and then a single mother would come over and get totally wrecked. Totally wrecked. And I'll never forget that, because in that moment, that was actually what popped up in my head. Not the fact that he could buy whatever he wanted. And I knew my dad couldn't do that. I knew that. I just knew he couldn't do it. So as a result, it stopped me in my tracks and long enough to get me to pause. And I think ultimately that's where my shift started to begin, even though it would take a lot longer than that.
You know, what's interesting though, is it makes sense to me why that would be the memory that pops out, because of your caretaking tendencies from when you were younger.
This is very true.
A financial abundance allows me to care for people in the way I'd like to care for them, even complete strangers.
Yeah, that's very true.
Whoa, you know what's interesting though, Stephen? I got to point something out. So it is amazing Steve's influence. Steve, right? Your mentor?
Yeah, Steve might. Yeah.
Steve's influence on you. And so we're thinking about it from that perspective. Imagine what it took for Steve to have that conversation, to take aside a child and have that conversation, and a pretty bold conversation of, hey, do you want to be like me or do you want to be like your dad?
Yeah.
That took courage. That took guts. I mean, he could have ended up with your dad's fist in his face. There's so many ways this could have gone wrong. Yeah. I just want to pause for a moment and really appreciate what it was like in Steve's position. And also remind us that sometimes it's just one conversation that can change someone's life.
That's right.
Just like how pivotal that was for you. I just want to see it from the other lens too.
Yeah, no, if you think, so here's the crazy part. Apparently Steve, I'm Steven, he's Steve, noticed my work ethic. He just saw that I was a hard worker. Now, granted, it seems like that's in the DNA, literally in 400 plus years of DNA.
Sure,
right?
Sure. But hard work is a dime of the net. It's not correlated to success the way people think it is.
Right.
Yeah.
But the crazy part is I later learned, and because one of the questions I had for Steve, and Steve passed away in 2003 before my first book ever came out. And it's been a number of years since my first book came out, but I went back and I had someone actually do some research behind me to make sure that I had my timeline kind of tightened up.
Sure.
And they went to go interview Steve's wife, Lona. And I said, please do me a favor. Ask Lona why Steve helped me. Just ask her why. He's like, okay, I'll totally do that. So they have their meeting. He comes back and he says, well, I said, well, did you ask her the question? He's like, yeah, I did. And he said, he said, well, do you want to know the answer? I was like, well, duh. I'm sitting here like asking you if you've tied the conversation. Of course I want to know. He says, Lona said that the reason that Steve helped you is because he saw himself in you. Steve grew up as a merchant marine, also grew up in more of an impoverished kind of mentality, also was a self-made kind of like gritty kind of determination. Like, I'm going to find a stinking way. I don't know how, but I'm going to find a way. Right. There was a caveat, and this is something I didn't know. Apparently, Steve Myrick is actually one of my grandfather's employers or employees. So Steve became an employee of my grandfather, and the roles got reversed because of the way Steve thought as compared to my grandfather.
Whoa, that's amazing.
Yeah. So to me, it was like this whole circle of influence. The Scoggins and the Myricks, for a long time were like intertwined. Scoggins, and it's funny how things have changed. In fact, I actually went out and got my general contractor's license a number of years ago. I still have it, but because Steve's daughter told me I couldn't do it.
I'll see that challenge and raise you. So, Stephen, I'm just thinking about how you went back and 400 years, and you're saying, I looked at my ancestry and I found that they struggled with finances or hard workers. Yes, that's the through line, but the money, left their hands pretty quickly. How does it feel to know that you've changed your ancestry? Like it ended with you, and going forward, it's all going to look different.
Well, I think the tricky part is just being self-aware to know that at any given moment, I can make a decision to make that all go away. Right. I've realized I was having this conversation with my youngest son. We were in Nashville not long ago. And I was reminding him, I said, do you realize if I come up here and do something stupid while I'm in Nashville, hurt somebody by accident or something like that, what that does to everything that we've been building, all the businesses, all the personal branding stuff that, comes with putting yourself out there and all this kind of stuff. I told him, I said, it only takes one mistake to basically set the dominoes out of your favor versus in your favor.
Yeah.
Sure. So while I appreciate the fact that my personal level of growth is directly connected to my personal level of suffering, which it is for everybody, I appreciate the journey. I also am accountable and responsible in this journey now to know that every decision I make can affect lives in any of my businesses.
Sure.
My family. One of the jokes that one of the things that he brought to me, he said, I'm curious, why do you always wear white shoes when you present? I said, well, because I always want to remind myself that I'm walking on holy ground. Because every single word that I say at a scale, at this stage in the game, we're both able to do this at scale. Every single word we say has weight.
It does.
And if you're not being responsible and respectful of that at any given moment, then what happens is you move back into selfishness and further away from selflessness, which means you become further away from the leader that you want to be, further away from the parent you want to be, further away from the thought leader you want to be. All of that stuff is directly tied to the constant awareness that development is development. It never ends.
Mm-hmm. And I think never graduate from this work.
Exactly, which is why I think it's so important for all of us on a regular basis, those who are aspiring to do more, to remember there's always going to be this transition of going from who you were to who you become.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but I know one of the things that one of our dear friends, Rory, says all the time is, it's funny, he and I had this banter back and forth about who created the quote first. Because he says it differently, but I learned it from Steve, right? And that is the greatest purpose in life I'll ever have is serving the person I used to be.
That's right? So good. Yes.
But if you think about it, what are you doing?
That's who you're most uniquely positioned to serve, right? You know how they think, you know what their habits, they're good, they're bad. You know what demons they're battling. You have the greatest insight. But Rory, I like the way Stephen just said it better. Since you said you guys are going back and forth. No, that's so good. But Stephen, how did you make that switch? So coming with your background and, you know, the modeling that you had when you were growing up, and to the point now I get on stage and I'm wearing white shoes because I'm walking on holy ground. How was imposter syndrome not riding shotgun? Or if it is, how do you quiet it? Like, how did you make that transition?
Yeah. So specifically with imposter syndrome, I dealt with that like pretty hardcore, especially when you started looking at, okay, now I'm putting myself out there. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And what do I know? And one of the things that has helped me is to remind myself of the journey that I've been on, and the benefit of the journey has now uniquely given me the chance to discuss or talk about. I think it's in our human nature to identify ourselves by our mistakes.
Sure.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I try to identify myself now by the impact. Like if there's one person in a room and they have an aha, it's just as important as 10,000 in a room that have an aha.
Sure.
Right. Because Steve Myrick radically shifted my life. He's one of several, right, that radically shifted my life.
So you're an example of what impact can do on someone.
And I would argue that we both are.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And many of the amazing guests that you've had on have all kind of shared that elements. Like we have the compassion, we have the empathy, we understand the suffering, we understand the sacrifice. We also understand what's on the other side of it.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
and
true.
I think that's ultimately why it's so important to not just reach for another level, but reach for the thing that's within the level. Right. Reach for the hidden meaning, if you will, in the level. So for example, I want to maybe grace larger stages. I'm just throwing that out there.
Sure.
Or something like that. Well, what I should be doing is, rather than focus on a larger stage, focus on serving really, really well at the stage I'm in.
Okay.
Right. So it's kind of like a 5 talent principle, right? If I want to be the kind of person that when given the opportunity, I double the opportunity, no matter what it is. Right. I want to be the kind of person that offers enough insight and enough help and enough frameworks and enough structure to allow other people to not only double their level, but surpass me in theirs. Right. And I think that's where maturity and immaturity kind of battle. An immature leader is going to come at it from an angle of, well, I need them here. Because I'm here.
Yeah.
Right. To me, a mature leader is like, come on, baby, let's go.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
So,
let's do that. I want you to surpass. I assume this permeates your parenting as well. That what you want for your kids is for them to have done better than you.
yes. I think that's guilty for all the parents. That's
I don't know. I know quite a few parents who would do good, but not so good that you outshine me. So I think that's a mark of a to use your term, mature parent as well. Maybe it's confidence. Maybe it's just parenting past insecurity. But I think that's important because I've seen a lot of parents who don't take that approach and instead like, I want you to do good, but not so good that you look better than me.
Yeah. Well, I think the greatest struggle that I've seen in parenting, and it's just outside, is trying to get our kids to be what we want them to be rather than what they were created to be.
So true. So true.
Right.
I was on another show. I was being interviewed the other day, and he was asking me about my journey through entrepreneurism and how young it started. And then he's like, well, you have two young daughters. He's like, I'm sure you have huge plans for them. And he's like, do you want them to be entrepreneurs as well? Tell me about your huge plans for them. I said, oh, I do have huge plans for them. It's for them to be their own beautiful selves. I would not wish entrepreneurism upon them unless that's what they want. But I was really clear. I was like, no. The worst thing I can do is place my expectations of the way I think their life should be. I just want them to be happy and healthy and contribute and be kind people. They're already doing that at 8 and 10. So I've got some pretty good trust that they'll continue to do that. But the worst thing we can do is place these heavy expectations on, well, you've got to do this because this is what I want for you. Or this was my lost opportunity or lost dream. No,
I love it because, without doing it that way, what are you really creating? You're creating a robot.
Yeah.
Right. You're not taking into account, my youngest son is really, really gifted. It turns out at entrepreneurial stuff. Like I've caught him teaching TikTok to people recently and some other stuff. My oldest son, however, is much more of the process minded, system oriented. He actually wants to be a history teacher and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, you're both currently positioned in your strength. Now, will your ultimate life end up like exactly where you are based on where you're headed? Probably not. Sure. But as long as you're operating in your unique strength and gift set, you will always be successful. And
happy as well, right? Versus doing something that just maybe the money's in it, but the passion's not in it, or the passion's in it, the money's not in it. If you can lean into your strengths, it ends up being much more rewarding. Stephen, I'd love to, I heard you speak recently about the 4 types of mentorship. And since a mentor was so pivotal in your life, can you talk about the 4 types? I think it was like one-on-one, historical, if you could.
Yeah, happy to. So, all right. So I'll tell you the whole reason I created this little, what we call micro content piece for my folks is because the number one question I get at live events is, will you be my mentor?
I bet.
Right. Right. So you're like, I'd love to it, but the chances of us having one-on-one interaction on a consistent basis would be very difficult. Right. So you're just being honest. Well, I got to thinking, I was like, wait a minute. So Steve Myrick still mentors me and he's not even on the earth anymore. Right. I still have these little nuggets that pop up every now and again that I'll just have these little fleeting memories. It's like watching one of your favorite movies just in general. And you have these flashbacks of these cool experiences. Right.
Sure.
Well, then I got to thinking, I was like, in today's world, what is different about mentorship? Right. So mentorship is nothing more than learning from someone else who's already been there, done that before you, and has the character to back it up.
Ooh, that's good. That's good.
I see people chasing mentors, wanting mentors, but the mentor themselves doesn't necessarily have the character to back up some of the training. And therefore it leads the person ultimately astray and down into some destructive behaviors. Okay.
Can you explain when you say character, what do you mean specifically?
Yeah. So I'm big on honesty. I'm big on loyalty. I'm big on the fact that you're not a guru, you're a guide, meaning you have to have already been there and done that, not just, watch somebody else's content and then digest it and reposition it, all kind of stuff. Right. It comes down to being authentic. So mentors that I gravitate towards, I have to know that I know that they have a war story of how they develop these skill sets.
Sure.
And more importantly, that they are currently the same person in the light as they are in the dark. And I'll give you an example of that.
I was going to say, are you a David Scoggins fan?
I don't know David, but I should, because our names are similar, right?
David Scoggins is amazing. Can't Hurt Me. That book is amazing. Listen to it on audio because the conversation that happens in between the readings is so powerful. I think you'd resonate with him.
I definitely got to check it out. But when it comes down to it, these mentorship, I had this moment in time. I used to be involved in and out of ministry stuff, and I would go to these large conferences, and I would see these amazing thought leaders. They would be on stage. They'd come off the stage. I'd be behind stage because I'd have access. And it was like, you are you all ain't the same person.
It's a persona. Yes.
Yeah. Yep. And it used to drive me crazy. And then I had this event that I went to about 3 years ago, and I fully anticipated the same thing to happen. I got there a day early. I went there as kind of I'm just going there for my own little healing kind of thing and whatever. And lo and behold, I get there a day early, so I'm setting up the stage and stuff. And out of the stage and stuff, I actually come back and I have backstage access.
Mm-hmm.
First time in a number of years that I saw that the person on stage matched the person behind the curtain. And it spoke to me so good. And like in a good way, I'm like, oh, this can be done right. Right. So if you look at that from a character standpoint and mentorship, then the 4 areas break down this way. First of all, there's a peer-to-peer mentor, right? That's kind of what we're doing, right? Mm-hmm. I'm sure you and I could sit down with a cup of coffee and we could bounce ideas back and forth all day long.
For sure.
Entrepreneurs resonate with entrepreneurs. We get it. Like there's always certain, and I guarantee you that you can also walk up to an entrepreneur, someone who says I'm an entrepreneur, look them in the eye and know if they are or aren't.
There's a hunger and the idea generation too.
There's a certain ambiance to us for entrepreneurs, right? Well, that would be kind of an example of peer-to-peer. You're playing ping pong, ideas back and forth. You got challenges coming back and forth. You're helping one another back and forth. Mm-hmm. And then you've got something that I refer to as the aspirational mentor. Now, an aspirational mentor for me would be someone like Steve Mark. Mm-hmm. Or in a roundabout way, my grandfather that taught me about my faith that I later adopted as my own. Right. Each of these men have character qualities that I want to emulate and I admire. Mm-hmm. Right. That maybe you're following a thought leader that you want to emulate their behaviors and you like what they're doing. The only question I would ask is, does that person have character? Are they leading you towards stuff or are they leading you towards substance? Where are they leading you? Right. And that's how you really know do I have a solid aspirational mentor to go after. The next one is what's known. A friend of mine named Doug Stewart did a whole entire presentation, a whole TED talk on mentorship, which just is phenomenal. And one of the ones that he brought up that I totally swiped from him, told him I swiped it. Hopefully he's not too mad at me, but I had to, which is called the historical mentor. Mm-hmm. So the historical mentor is nothing more than a great book or asset that still exists today, even though the mentor may not. Right. So you just mentioned David Goggins' book, how much it meant to you. Technically, even though you still have access to David.
It's historical.
The book is going to be there.
For sure. For sure.
See what I'm saying?
When I was going through my entrepreneur journey, it was all historical mentors. And that was actually a mistake I made, is that I didn't have like peer-to-peer or aspirational ones. Everyone that I was learning from were all in books or speaking engagements.
Yeah. Well, and see, and books are good, but books are teaching. They're
one way. They're one way too.
Exactly. There's no challenge. There's no conversation. Because another thing that I think we do, and I'll go to the fourth one in a second, is we try to make a one size fits all approach to everything. Mm-hmm. Right. And the reality is we all have different starting points. We're all at different points in our journey. And as a result, the frameworks that we use to move past certain hurdles in our journey need to be different.
Sure.
Kind of scenario. Which kind of leads me to the final mentor, which is what's known as the digital mentor. Never has it been easier on the history of the planet to have access to fantastic content that can help you motivate your mind, change your heart, and help you take the next step, right? And if you use the same lens that I discussed with the aspirational mentor and you funnel all of these different pieces of content through that, you're going to find something really important if it's a quality mentor. Quality mentors and quality content and quality resources, the number one thing they all share in common is that they move you past the answers you want.
Okay.
So and I discovered this when in searching for my faith. When I became a person of faith, I spent well over 5 years as a very angry atheist because my life was full of suffering. If there was a God, then how would he hate me? My grandfather, who passed away in 2016, used to refer to me as his little soul winner from the time that I was born all the way to 2016 when he passed away.
His little what?
His little soul winner. It's a
soul winner. Okay.
Yeah, it's a faith-based term. But and again, I don't ask, the audience doesn't have to share my faith.
Sure.
In the main case, but he would say that and used to irritate the ever-loving fire out of me. I'm like, stop calling me that. God is not real and all this kind of stuff, right? Yeah. Stop calling me that. And he would continue on. And then I would bring up all these different things about science and Big Bang and all this kind of stuff and collider and And he would just look at me, ever so lovely, and just say, he said, "You're just not digging deep enough. Keep digging. Keep digging." And I finally was like, dig for what? He goes, "You're only digging for the answers you want. You don't want God to be real." And I was like, And I took that same principle because I believe principles govern promises. So if I want to live a specific promise, there are principles to guide me to get there. I took that same principle of digging past the answers that I want to help me understand that one of the greatest hurdles that we face, especially as high performing entrepreneurs, right? One of the biggest ones is that we already got it figured out. We already think we know the answers to the questions, but yet we don't have evidence to support it.
Sure.
Great mentors, whether it's a digital one, a historical one, a peer-to-peer, an aspirational, whatever it is, great mentors always move you past the answers that you want and onto the answers that you need.
That's really good. I have to think on that, Stephen. Ooh, that's really good. I'm just thinking of, I run, through PivotMe, we run masterminds. And a saying we say a lot is that people come for one reason. We tell them what they need to hear, so they come in the door, but we give them what they need. And they always say, man, I came in to whatever, increase my profit, launch a new product, whatever that is. But why I walked away with this other thing, I didn't know how bad I needed it. And I think it's very applicable there. As soon as you said that, that's where I went. And I'm like, yep, you give them more than the answer they were originally seeking.
Yeah. And you ultimately, you give them what they're so desperately seeking, breakthrough.
Yeah.
Right. They want breakthrough. There's a ceiling, there's a something, and many times we cannot articulate what the thing is. Like we just know that we're not content.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes that contentment comes out of a place of fear and insecurity. Sometimes that contentment comes out of a place of stagnation.
Yeah.
Right. You've just been here too long. Right. But the number one thing normally is the fact that we think we already got it figured out. So therefore we don't reach out to great mentors. We don't take advantage of fantastic masterminds like the ones you have. You know, we don't do what's necessary to actually achieve breakthrough, which is why when you see your clients like come in, they're like, yeah, I thought I was going to do this. And they come like my marriage is better. And like, you're
so
like,
true.
Yeah.
So someone starts and it's like, I want to get on my workout schedule again and work out 5 days a week. I'm like, all right, we'll do that and some. And invariably it's that my marriage is so much better. Or, I started a nonprofit, some radical thing ends up happening, but they also are working out 5 days a week. So that's a win too.
Exactly. They have to get everything.
Good. Yeah. Oh, that is powerful. So, so one of the things, you've obviously had a lot of successful businesses now. We talked about it in your bio. I don't want to say what's your secret to the success of those, but how do you manage? One of the things we talk about on PivotMe a lot is self-sabotage, how we get in our own way of success. Usually our biggest struggle is us. The chokehold in our business is us. How did you overcome that? And if it's still a struggle, how are you continuing to overcome it?
Well, so first of all, I would say that the easiest way to conquer self-sabotage is to focus on becoming selfless. Because if it's not about you, it won't be about you. Number one. In other words, if you're not, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's good.
Right? Now, how did I discover that? I actually discovered that, unfortunately, after the man that I mentioned earlier, Steve Meyer, gave me one hell of an opportunity. He literally put me in a business for myself the first time out. This is 97, and bought me all the tools, all the equipment, everything that I needed. All right. To put me in the business, to start in the construction trade, obviously working with him and then open up the doors for other clients. And what does a 19-year-old kid do when they start making bukus of money, have been impoverished up until that time frame? Your entire weight of your mantle and your character just get destroyed. I was the guy who was like, I'm going to the pool hall. Why? Because my dad just hung out in pool halls, and I was making it rain.
Yeah.
Like flipping the $100 bills at the bar, making sure everybody saw that I was flipping the $100 bills. Right.
Yep.
I bought the stupid sports car. Right. I paid way too much for it. Right.
Sure.
Got it financed. Like I started, got involved in a toxic relationship and then proceeded to hand my credit card over and over again to try to appease the person that was in the relationship. And the next thing you know, I look up, I'm alone. I'm $70,000+ in debt. My emotions are a wreck. And what do? I literally walk off that opportunity. Okay. Now, hindsight being 2020, at first I used to beat myself up about that. However, when it became less about me and more about making sure that I took care of Steve, a year later, after going through my homelessness journey, Steve gave me a second chance. And I knew that I would not let him down again, including building the scaffolding out of the trash piles to get started. I refused. I just flat out refused not to do something with that opportunity. And I only had that from that contrast, right? I was going to become like my father, become more like Steve, right? And any given time we have a choice of who we become, right? Have I gone through self-sabotage? Yes. That was a major example of self-sabotage. Like I expected it to fall apart and I literally brought it into my life. Right. The tricky part is when it comes down to doing what Steve did for me, which is creating a legacy, all I want to do is create a legacy that outlives me. I want the best of me to be in my kids. I want the best of me to be out in the audience. I want the best of me to be in the hardworking person that's trying to just put food on the table. I just want the best of me to be something that someone else will one day, 10 years, 5 years, 20 years down the road is on the podcast. Maybe they just started speaking or whatever. And they say, this guy Scoggins made a difference. Like he just made a difference. Right.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that it's such a cool experience. I did this when I had Les Brown on my show, probably.
It's one of my favorites. He's on my dream list. I haven't had him on PivotMe, but I'm a huge Les Brown fan.
I'll see what I can do.
Yes, that would be great.
Yeah. I'll definitely connect you with the people that can connect you with the people, so to speak.
Sure. You heard it here first. Steven Scoggins going to help me get Les Brown. No,
that's right. Steven Scoggins will help shoot for it for sure. But,
his story is just amazing, and he's absolutely one of my heroes.
He's amazing, and he literally glows.
Yeah, he does.
He's one of the best human beings on the planet. I had him on my show not long ago, and I was able to it's crazy. I had the conversation like on air, but off air, like it wasn't going to technically be the start of the show. My team was like, you have to release that. You've got to release the beginning part of you and Les. I'm like, why? I'm like, you don't understand. That was powerful for all of us to watch. And here's what was powerful. I was able to tell Les that in 1998, he was doing an Amway conference for one of the Amway organizations. He was invited to one of their summit events. Somebody in the trailer park invited me to go to an Amway conference, right? I was rebuilding my life. I said, sure, let's go. And I'm in a stadium crowd. I think it wasn't the Dorton Arena or something like that in Raleigh. It wasn't our big RBC Center thing now we have now, but it was a stadium. It was either Greensboro. And I was in nosebleed seats and out pops Les. And he did one of his signature talk called It's Possible.
I have it memorized. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I was able to tell Les, Les, you don't understand. Up until that moment, I had all but given up that things were possible. And, I gave him just a really quick rundown, businesses and team members, all this kind of stuff. And I was like, you're one of those people. You're one of 5 people I can count on my hand that got me here so far. Wow. And I don't even know where I'm going next. Right.
Yeah.
I'm just excited about the journey.
Yeah.
But when you can share that with a mentor of yours and share that journey and stuff like that, it makes a big difference, which is how we bring this thing full circle. If we want to overcome self-sabotage and we want to overcome those hurdles that get in our way, we have to understand it's not about us. It's about the generations hidden inside of us. Let me say that again. It's not about us. It's about the generation hidden inside of us. It's about what you're going to do, not what has already been done. And if you can just put that at the top of your forefront of your mind, anytime you feel like you don't want to try or it's not possible or whatever, it will help you get over that hurdle. And you do it enough times, you'll create the muscle memory to inevitably build the confidence you need to keep moving forward.
For sure. So powerful. And back to our earlier discussion about being, serving the person you once were. One of the things that we do here is we connect people to use avatar language, but we connect people to the person you're most uniquely qualified to help. And when you imagine getting on stage and thinking there's a younger version of April sitting there that needs to hear what I'm about to say, there's a younger version of Steven that's in the nosebleed seats. And he is just spent his last $50 on his ticket here. And he's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't even know what I'm going to eat. And he hears what you have to say. Like when you really connect to that person, you've got to show up. You've got to leave it. It's funny. Someone asked me the other day in an interview, they said, what is your biggest fear? And I said, time, that I haven't done it all. I said, I need to leave it all on the mat. Like there's so much in me and so much crazy experience and I want to give it all away. And so
Yeah.
the thing that I fight with most is time, because I want to make sure that I give it all away. I love this concept, Stephen, and I love what I hear is this pursuit of, it started out with Steve and then maybe it moved to Les Brown, but you wanted to be someone else's Les, someone else's Steve. And it sounds like you're doing that for thousands of people now.
That is my heart's desire, is to make a big enough impact where people don't have to suffer. If you think about it, to give you another faith example, just because it's the one at the top of mind, there was a study done a number of years ago that said there was enough wealth in the current faith community to actually solve many of the problems we keep begging God to solve on our behalf. What's not happening is we don't have enough people who are remembering where they came from and remembering who they're called to serve as part of that process. If you think about it, I started much of my journey of awareness 16, 17, 18, 19 years old. What if I can get to a Stephen Scoggins at 13 or 10 or 7 years old? You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
That's how you break generational junk.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? So,
yeah. And like when I mentioned earlier that my mentors were all historical mentors, I didn't know them. I didn't have mentors. And I talk about it openly on the show that was one of the biggest mistakes. And it made it a lot harder than it needed to be. I had to work a lot harder and I had to sacrifice a lot more because I didn't have a mentor. And so what do I want to be? The mentor to others, the other people that are out there going, I've got the work, I've got the determination, hard work. It ain't going to get you there. Like there's more to it than just that. That's why we see people get ahead and you're like, why that guy? He doesn't even work that hard. Because it's a little bit more nuanced than that. But a mentor will help you get there. And so if we remember where we come from, we can solve that same problem that we finally solve for ourselves. Then it becomes a responsibility for us to solve it for other people.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, what you just described is becoming the mentor you wish you had.
Totally.
Right?
Totally.
And if your focus is just to become that person, you'll continually bust through ceilings. You won't have a choice.
Yeah.
Because it's always going to require you to face the hard thing or do the hard work first or be uncomfortable. Like it's going to force you constantly.
Sure.
And then you get these little moments of bliss.
Yep.
And you do it all over again.
Yeah. Because they're watching. The people that you need to help are watching. I have a lot of whiteboards in my office, but at the very top of my right, I have do you ever do like the 4x8, the poor man's whiteboard? You get it from Home Depot and then you frame it out. It looks real nice, but it's giant. I got a couple of poor man whiteboards in here. The very top of that whiteboard, it has 30 of my favorite quotes. Les Brown is on there 2 or 3 times. The very top line says, I owe it to 8-year-old April.
Mic drop.
It's pretty good, huh? I feel like that would apply for you too, Stephen. Yeah,
I'm dropping the mic.
All right, right. So I think about what does 8-year-old April, because I have an 8-year-old, I have an 8 and 10-year-old daughter. So I'm very aware of what I'm modeling for them. But then I also think about, okay, what does 18-year-old April need, who was just getting into corporate America and didn't have role models, and what does she need versus, 30-year-old April, who's well on her way in the corporate career. She's climbing the corporate ladder. She's got the side gig and the side hustle and all that sort of stuff. But thinking about serving that person and connecting to one, because you're not talking to an audience when you're on a podcast, and I'm sure you do this too. You're not talking to an audience, you're talking to one person. You just have to serve that one person. You just have to transition. They're here and they have to get there, and you can solve for X. And that's why we've got to show up. That's why we have to keep, influencing people and impacting people, because once we break through, then it's our job to open up the door and let as many people through.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, there's a reason that my logo is a bridge. So anybody that goes to watch Stuck to Unstoppable on YouTube, you'll see a giant chasm with a bridge that then that represents me almost taking my life at a bridge. It represents me being a bridge between both the faith and secular world. It represents me being a bridge between what people want most and what they're doing now. Like it's all of that wrapped up and that's why I love like being on this journey with you, is because we're after the same
thing. Yeah.
And together we're gonna have a blast and hopefully transform a lot of lives in the process, for sure.
We got a cross pass in Nashville. I don't know how we keep missing, but I'm gonna be out there soon for the next application event. So cool. I love your logo, by the way. We have our educate, elevate, execute, and I was like, the bridge is powerful. That we got to get back to the drawing board, because that is so powerful. I mean, that moves people and represents so much. So let me ask you this. If you could tell the world one thing, what would it be?
It's easy. Don't quit. It's so simple. But it's the number one thing that's probably keeping you from achieving what you want most is your desire to give up when you need to push forward. I know, and again, I know it's simple, and I know I was supposed to say something super profound, but the reality is I am where I am today because I just wouldn't quit. I wouldn't quit. I wouldn't quit growing. I wouldn't quit learning. I wouldn't quit learning that I could do it better. I will publicly tell people I was a horrible leader the first 10 years I was in business because I was operating from that insecure ADHD kid that had people that had college degrees working for him or with him. And I didn't want them to know I didn't really know what I was doing, that I was totally shooting from the hip. Right. In order to get through those hurdles, break through those barriers, you can't quit. Even when you want to, even when you're crying on the floor in your pillow and you're like, I know I'm in. And again, I've had these moments and been in what most would refer to as financial success, right? Mm-hmm. Or you got a great reputation in the marketplace and you're doing all this kind of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. The only moments that get you through into the next level are the ones that you're scared of now.
Ooh, so, say that again. That was good.
Yeah,
say that again.
Yeah, absolutely. So the only way you get to where you're trying to go is the base. See, I can't even say it again because that was
it was so good. It was one time only.
Rewind. No, but I mean, at the end of the day, the only reason you're not where you want to be at right now is because you probably are scratching or you're at that ceiling where you want to bust through, but you're kind of scared of where you're going. Mm-hmm. So you got to break through what it is you're afraid of in an effort to actually become fruitful with what you're meant to have. Kind of scenario. So we'll have to rewind it because I don't even remember what I said.
It was so good. It was so good. So 10 years out, Steven, 10 years out, what does that look like? What's happened? And you go, man, that was a success. Like I did what I was here to do.
10 years out. I'm able to look at people that I've been able to encourage and inspire and give them frameworks and strategies of their own and to see their success. I'm acquainted with Dave Ramsey a little bit. And one of the things that I love about his brand is the debt-free scream that they do. Like they apply the principles, they apply the work, they've done the work, and the scream is for them. I just haven't figured out what my scream thing's going to be yet. Right?
Sure.
I want to be able to know, I'd love to be able to see it in my lifetime that I've made a difference. But if not, I'm okay with not seeing it in my lifetime if need be. But yeah, the next 10 years is lots of live events, lots of books, lots of one-on-one interactions, lots of big bear hugs, and lots of laughter and cutting up and wiping tears and all of that. To me, that's a meaningful life, is to know you made a meaningful difference in somebody else's life.
Agreed. I hope you got some amazing information from our interview today, and I've set up the next video for you. So I'll see you over there at the next video.